welcome back to NostalgiaCast, where we take a look at our childhood favorites to see if they stand the test of time or if they're past their prime. I'm your co-host, Darin Lundberg.
And I'm the other co-host, Johnny Craddock.
And today we're going to be talking about the 1989 juggernaut that was Tim Burton's Batman. But before we get into that, this would be our 21st episode?
21st. In fact, Darin, I made this. I don't know if you can see this, but this is the same clapper we used when we were kids. On the little.
Are you kidding?
We would make as kids.
Yeah.
Like Batman 1989. Take
that.
3. This is take 3.
So, yeah. I guess we should obviously trying to figure out this whole Zoom thing and the recording video and trying to get back in the swing of. We'll talk about where we've been in between our episodes, but this is our third time having to record this and trying to come up with new things instead of it making it feel like the same old stale conversation. Hopefully, it didn't seem like we memorized anything, but yeah, this is our third try trying to make it work. It's still. I don't know. We still have to edit it together, and what you'll hear on YouTube, we'll see on YouTube and hear on the interwebs, as we like to say, it will be a finalized version. We don't want to compare ourselves to other podcasts. We're kind of still trying to find our feet, and we'll get there. But I guess what we wanted to talk about, why there's such a big. How long has it been since we recorded?
It's been 2, maybe almost 3 years even. Well, I've been in New York for 3.5.
Wow.
And we kept it going for a little while when I first moved out here. And we tried doing the Skype thing, and I would fly back and forth, and we'd do like 3 episodes at once while I was in town. But I think just the life changes that we had with my wife having a baby and me losing my job, getting a new job, moving across country, you quitting your job, starting a new job. All that stuff kind of put a wrench into things. So we kind of took a little hiatus for a while. But like I say, we're trying to get back, and we'll find our footing soon. So
we're trying to jump on the Zoom meeting bandwagon, right? Or the YouTube. Again, I apologize. I don't like staring at my face. I don't know how you feel about that, Johnny.
I'm just looking at you the whole time. So
okay. All right. I guess that. So I apologize to the watchers, I guess you could say. But yeah, I think. And we had the last 2 episodes, we sat on them. It was Dirty Rotten Scoundrels and the Goonies, right? We sat on them for a bit, and then we released them as bonus content. But it just got too hard. It was, with the new jobs and everything, we talked about this. I'm an editing fiend. Like, I tried to cut out all the ers and the ums, and listening to podcasts, I just realized that a lot of them don't cut that stuff out.
Yeah. I listened to a podcast the other day with Bill Burr. It was like 2.5 hours of just him telling stories. And it was like, we didn't cut anything out. So it was just something would go wrong and they'd leave it in.
Yeah. And me, I would try to cut all that stuff out and try to whittle it down to a measly 45 minutes or something like that. And so I figured I didn't need to do that. And then you and I both started having meetings with this newfangled Zoom thing. And so I noticed that a lot of podcasters were using this for their podcasts. And so I thought, what are we doing? Why are we sitting on our hands? We need to get back into it.
And doing this like this is kind of like we're in the same room. You know what I mean? Like, I can see you. I can see your Batman posters and your Batman movies. So it's almost like I'm there with you,
Okay, that's good. It's good seeing your face instead of just hearing your voice. And so again, that's where we've been. For those that are just joining or those that haven't caught up, I hope you have. You can listen our LIBSYN website. We have all the backlog of our 20 episodes. The point with NostalgiaCast is we want to take these movies that meant something to us as a kid that might not mean as much to us now. Right. And that can be a problem, taking movies that we love. How can you see past that childhood love of it? A couple of movies that we covered, we did Popeye with Robin Williams. We did Transformers, the movie, the animated one. And those were big movies when I was a kid. And it was hard watching them, like thinking, is this good? Like, is this bad? Do I have rose-colored glasses on?
Right. I mean, it is hard because sometimes when you're younger, you just get so attached to a film and you almost can't see past any of the flaws. And then when you get older, those flaws are more apparent, and so you're like, "Whoa, this was not as good as I remember it being."
Right.
So that can hurt. So I understand that. Yeah, sure.
Okay. So were there? I mentioned a couple. Were there any episodes that you remember that you just couldn't get past your nostalgia for them? This is just to say that we're not perfect. We fall into this trap too, right? That's
what you mean as far as ones that we've done, like our previous? Oh, okay. I would probably say that the Noise is Off episode that we did, you kept pushing me to think about why I liked it so much and what I really liked about it.
Yeah.
When we ended up falling on the point that I liked it because it was a good play. You know what I mean? And it is a good play, and it was originally a play. But the film still shot it like a play. It didn't do anything cinematic. It didn't like take them outside the, you know, the set to like an actual building or actual location. It just was like they're on stage performing a play, which is still good. I still love the movie and I still love the play. But I saw your point after thinking about it for a while that, yeah, you know, sometimes you get too close to something and you can't really see, you know, what may be wrong with it. Not that I think there's really much wrong with it, but I would say that I agree with you that it should have been shot more cinematically.
And that was probably the closest we came to having an argument.
Yeah.
Yeah, as far as the episodes go. I remember I just kept saying, well, but what if they shot it? And just a little bit of history. Like, you and I have been friends for how long? We've been friends for?
I don't even know anymore. It's been like 30-something years.
And we were, my favorite story is we were in Manna La Mancha, and I played the innkeeper, and then what was your character's name again?
Dr. Carrasco.
Well, you and I, we had this business where we decided that as prisoners of this jail, we were going to bump into each other and like give each other dirty looks. But I remember opening night, we did that. We bumped into each other. We glared at each other. And then automatically we were like, and we had to turn away because that's just our relationship, right? We don't have. And so that
happened every night too. That was like every night.
Yeah, just couldn't do it. So that Noise is Off. I think that was the closest. But again, we didn't like go at each other's throats. It was just, I think that's the point of nostalgia, is trying to push past. You know, it's not. They say like in a relationship, it's not good to ignore the issues or like if. You know, if somebody cheats on somebody, that's a weird analogy, but if you cheat on your spouse or whatever, and just to not talk about it, that doesn't solve the problem. It doesn't. When you bury something and you don't internalize it, is that healthy? I guess that's what we want to get at. And so now with the movie we wanted to talk about today, that's definitely an issue. Let's go ahead and talk about Batman. Let's get to the meat. Hopefully. Like I said, we're novices at this video thing. Hopefully we'll won't bore you too much and we'll be entertaining. But absolutely, let's talk about Batman right after the trailer.
Vale.
Bruce Wayne.
And what do you do for a living?
Lieutenant, is there a 6-foot bat in Gotham City?
Nice outfit.
You look fine.
I didn't ask. I have given a name to my pain.
What are you?
I'm Batman.
Where does he get those wonderful toys?
My life is really complex.
Winged freak terrorizes. Wait till they get a load of me.
Okay, so Batman, 1989, big juggernaut of a movie. Jack Nicholson, Michael Keaton, directed by Tim Burton. Well, let me start by asking you, Johnny, the Batmania that hit in 1989. Were you a part of that? Do you remember any of that?
You know, I remember it, but I wouldn't say that I was a big part of it. I remember the hysteria behind it. I remember the Prince soundtrack and the Prince MTV music videos. I remember I was pretty close to my cousins growing up, and they really got into it. And I remember being at their house one afternoon kind of just playing in the backyard, jumping on the trampoline. And my oldest cousin, she brought out this big boom box, and she blasted the Bat Dance song, the Prince, you know, album from the movie.
Right.
And which is probably why I don't like Prince.
Yeah.
But anyway, all I remember is hearing the quotes from the movie from Joker saying, "This town is an enema," and I thought it was pretty lame. And I remember thinking, like, I'm not going to see that movie.
Yeah.
And in fact, I had to go and ask my parents what an enema was, because of hearing that word, I didn't know what it was. So that's when I found out that what an enema was.
Did they
But
give
anyway,
you an enema?
No.
Okay.
That's why I found out.
We'll show you here.
And, it wasn't till a couple years later that I finally saw the movie for the first time. And I can be honest, I thought it looked cool. I remember liking the movie. I remember liking the Batman character and the idea behind Batman. But as far as like getting involved in all the hype of the movie, I wasn't part of that. But
Okay.
I remember it.
Okay. And did
What
you
about
see?
you?
Yeah.
What about you though? Were you kind of like sucked into the whole Batmania?
Well, I did. Did you see the movie in a theater?
No, I saw it on a VHS tape a couple years later after it
Okay.
came out.
Did you already say that and I completely just spaced it, or?
Well, yeah.
Okay. Well, just to.
I did not see it in a theater, no.
Okay, just to repeat for people that didn't like me, that weren't paying attention the first time. Yeah, so I, as far as the hype goes, I was heavily involved in that. Batman has always been really big for me, and so the movie when it came out, I remember my cousin Keith, he saw it opening day, and he said in the I think the Kings Plaza Mall, the line wrapped around the it went from one floor to another, like 2 floors down the line to see the movie. And then, so I was hyped to see it. And just a little bit of a background, I saw it in New York because growing up as an only child, we talked about this on the podcast before, but my mom, when I wasn't in school, she would send me off to New York to live with my relatives for June, July, and August, just so she wouldn't have to worry about me while she was at work. So that was like my home away from home. My Uncle John and my Auntie Sonia, I was staying with them that weekend, and they decided, hey, let's go down. So we went to the Alpine Cinema, I believe, in Brooklyn. And we went at 9 o'clock, and we stood in line for 3 hours. There was a line around the block. So we didn't know if we were going to get in, but we did buy tickets. We stood in line. We got into the midnight show. And man, I don't know, you're living in New York now. I don't know if you've seen a big blockbuster with a New York crowd, or if that's the area that you live in.
No, we're upstate New York, so it's pretty quiet where we're living.
So you're more civilized.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Well, the theater that a Brooklyn theater or a Queens theater, like it's rambunctious. The only way I could describe that. They shouted and they hooped and they hollered when the lights went down. They shouted when the Batman title card came up. They shouted when Batman lowered onto the rooftop to beat up those 2 thugs. They shouted when the Batmobile showed up. They just screamed and they shouted and they laughed and just at everything. And so being a part of nostalgia, that's one of the things I know that, for NostalgiaCast, we try to pick movies that are in like a Walmart bin, right? That we haven't seen in decades, right?
Yeah, right.
And so we see it for $3.74 or $5. We think, oh, I haven't seen that in forever, and that's why we buy it. And $3, it's not a waste. So we buy it and watch it and decide whether we like it or not. But Batman is kind of a break from that tradition because it is a movie that everybody knows. But with the the new Batman movie that's in production, with obviously the Batman versus Superman that just came out, all the arguments that we've been having about Batman, I've noticed that this 1989 Batman, the nostalgia for it is kind of I'm not saying there's anything wrong with nostalgia. That's what we want to talk about, right? What we're going to say in this podcast is not just because we say it doesn't mean that we're knocking you for liking it, right?
Yeah, right. I mean, we're not here to put down anybody else's opinions. I mean, you can have your opinion, and sometimes our opinions could be unpopular, but it's just that, an opinion. But to your point of nostalgia, sometimes people do get kind of lost in that, and they can't really differentiate between the experience they had as a kid, with a movie, and then as more than as an adult. Because what happens is, you grow up, you mature a little bit, and you see things through a different lens. You know what I mean? So which is why we do this. We want to see if the movies we saw when we were younger, that we have this, I don't know, nostalgia for, if it still holds up later on, and sometimes it doesn't.
Right. And so that's what I'm talking about. The nostalgia for seeing Batman 1989 in the theater. When I walked out of that movie, I walked out on an absolute high. I was convinced that I'd seen the best movie I'd ever watched in a theater. Because of that experience, because you walk out and you take that with you wherever you go. And sometimes decades later, you still are living on that high, but sometimes you're not. I remember watching the movie with my parents on video. It was one of the first movies to sell through like within months of being released theatrically, and you could buy it. Like most videos at that time when they came out in VHS, you had to rent them. You couldn't buy them. I mean, you could buy them, but they were like $89, $90. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so Batman was one of the first that you could buy it for $24.95, and so I bought that video. I just counted down the days. I watched it with my parents who hadn't seen it on the big screen, and I remember laughing at all the Nicholson bits. You know, the part where he's, wait till they get a load of me, and he goes ooh, and he makes the noises, and I laughed, and I looked over at my parents, and they were like, "Why is that funny? Why are you laughing at that?" And so I just thought, well, you're old, you don't get it. But then, years and years and years later, I remember just watching it and thinking, you know what? That wasn't that. Why am I laughing at that? Why is that so funny? It's really not that funny. And so that's the nostalgia that we're talking about.
Well, I also know what you mean when you say you felt inspired or you were on this high for a long time. I mean, I've felt that with certain movies, more so with movies that I worked on. When a movie is more personal for me and I get to see what I helped create, I'm more inspired to create more. You know what I mean? Movies that somebody else made, I'm more willing to criticize. And I don't really get that as much with the big blockbusters or the big, the Marvel superhero movies or whatever. But there are movies that, I've gone and seen in the theater and walked out of and just thought, wow, that was amazing. And I feel like I can conquer the world now,
Yeah, absolutely. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? Some of the movies that you see that do that, they do hold up. And so that's kind of why we wanted to talk about this movie. There are people that I've spoken with and tweeted with that when I try to bring up stuff, well, what did you think about this? What did you think about that? They're like, well, I don't know. It's still great. It's still great. Like they can't really criticize it because they're still on that high. Yeah.
I've seen some people, take offense to it and take, personal offense to it when you say something about a movie that they love. And you're like, I don't mean to, I'm not attacking you personally. I'm just saying this movie has flaws, you know what I mean? And that's it. I'm just pointing out the flaws in the movie, not saying anything's wrong with you for liking it.
Right. Okay. All right. So there we kind of have some backstory on a Batman as far as the movie experience goes. What is your experience with Batman? What is obviously I've got a lot to say about it, but what is your experience?
Before you ask me that question, I want to ask you that question because anybody who knows you knows you're a huge Batman fan, right? I mean, you're pretty vocal about it. And anyway, so I want to pose that question to you first because I want to hear what your experience is. Why Batman? What makes Batman so important for you?
Okay. Well, everybody has their favorite superhero, right? Even if you're not 100% into comic book reading. You grow up with Superman, you admire his the hope that he stands for, like the goodness that he shows everybody and inspires in people. Spider-Man is the nerdy kid down the street, or you're the nerdy kid, and read these comics and you think, that's me. Like I could have the superpowers. And so the draw with Spider-Man is it could be anybody. You could be Spider-Man. Yeah. With Batman, I just think he's the most psychologically fascinating out of all you see him as a kid and you see him in the bat suit and you're like, whoa, that's kind of cool. And so who is this guy and what is he up to? And, you don't really learn that from the TV series back in the 60s. But when you start diving into the backstory of the character and how he's created, this was a kid that let's just cut to the chase. He's psychotic. He's a broken man. When you witness your parents murdered, that does something to you and it scars him for life, right? So he grows up, he's obviously damaged by that, but he realizes he doesn't want that to ever happen to anybody again. So he trains his mind and his body to be the ultimate representation of man, right? He's a genius. He's super strong. He has all the gadgets. He's like the epitome of white privilege. That kind of sparks some debate as of right now, especially. And the draw for me though is he's psychotic. He's broken, trying to piece himself back together, trying to do the right thing, trying to keep, the world from falling into that same pit that he fell into. And he's trying to fight back against that and be a hero. And that's the knife edge. He's walking that knife edge of his own sanity, right? If he kills, he becomes the person that he's fighting against. But he should kill the Joker. He should kill these mass murderers, Victor Zsasz or whoever. He should kill these people who are just going to go on and keep hurting people. But Batman can't break that rule. Bruce Wayne is trying to piece himself back together, and that's why he's kind of cursed to do this for the rest of his life.
Okay.
And so
you mentioned Bruce Wayne's parents' murder. And kind of on a personal note, because I know you so well, I mean, you lost your dad at a young age. Yeah. Could that be something that you related to? Could you relate to Bruce Wayne lost his parents and you lost a parent? Is that something that maybe you can think back on and maybe think, oh, maybe that's why I relate so well to this character?
Wow. That's a good question. I don't think I've ever thought about that before. Whoa, interesting. Well, I know that
to bring up anything,
right, right. He didn't die in an alley anywhere, but I think the thing that springs to mind right now is 1989 was the year of Batman. That's the year. That's the movie that all I could think about, all I could talk about. But Field of Dreams, my favorite movie of all time, my sentimental favorite, that movie also came out that year. But I was blinded by Batman. That was my whole life. And it wasn't again until years later. Well, I think I was sick. It was in high school this time, and I was sick at home, and Field of Dreams was on at night. And because that movie has the father and son dynamic in it, right? And I hadn't played catch. I never got to. Obviously, I didn't get to play catch with my biological dad. He died when I was 2. I didn't get to play catch with my stepdad until I was 12, and that was a different kind of growth experience. But I don't know. That might have something to do with it. I just know that tying Field of Dreams in, going back to that struck me more as a father-son thing than Batman would have. Okay. I don't know, but that is something I'll have to talk to my psychiatrist about that and see what she has to say. But yeah, so that's what Batman is to me in a nutshell. But I mean, what about you? Let's talk about you. What is your experience with Batman?
Okay. Well, for me growing up, I had a really hard time believing these superheroes with these superpowers and being able to have x-ray vision and shoot lasers from their eyes and fly around the world. I had a really hard time suspending my disbelief when I'd watch these movies, and it just always seemed too outrageous. And I'd just be like, oh, well, that can't happen. That's impossible. You know what I mean? When Batman came along, he didn't have any of these superpowers, but he had the resources. He had the ability, like I say, to train himself and to learn how to use the weapons and to drive these automobiles and to help, right some wrongs. And so because he was cool and he looked cool and he wasn't some crazy, alien from outer space that had these crazy powers, he was someone that, learned these abilities and then used what he had to help. And so that was always, more believable for me. I could believe that this actually could happen.
Okay.
And so it was more believable and it just looked cool. And I like the character. I like the premise behind the whole thing. Okay. So that's what appeals to me.
So would you agree that it's also the psychology that appeals to you about that?
For sure, yeah. Yeah, that's definitely a big part of it, yeah.
Okay. So the believability factor, does Batman 1989 have that believability factor for you?
More so than Superman.
Okay. Right. Okay.
More so than those other kind of movies, so.
Right. Okay. Okay. Well, we'll talk about the idiosyncraticness of Batman 1989. It's definitely unique. It's in its own world. Let's talk about the obviously there's a reason that this movie hit it so big, right? If we could talk about 3 reasons why, like 3 positives, let's talk about the main draws to this movie. I have 3 positives or 3 main draws about the movie. You probably have, I think we talked about it. You have the 3.
I can probably guess what they're going to be.
Okay.
what your picks are, but
Okay.
I'm pretty sure mine might be a little bit different.
Okay, well, let's talk about that. Let's be completely positive about this movie and why it's a draw. Go ahead and with your first guess, I guess.
All right, the first thing that I think makes this movie great is the production design. I think the design of this movie is near perfect. I mean, there are maybe some little problems here and there, but for the most part, I love the way Gotham turned out. I think it looks like Gotham should look. And I love the sets. I love the cars, and everything about it just to me looks super cool. And so I actually kind of thought that I would have liked to seen some subsequent Batman movies kind of adopt the same kind of design that this movie created. Because in the other movies, it just looks like they're in some major downtown city in the United States, and it doesn't really look like Gotham to me. You know, it's like, oh, that's Gotham. That's just, Chicago or New York or whatever.
Yeah, yeah, okay. And I think with the Christopher Nolan, sorry, go ahead. What was that?
Oh, just as far as this movie goes, the design I think is really, really well done.
Right, and I would agree. That's my number one draw too. What I was going to say about the Christopher Nolan Batman is I think he has nothing but respect for the Tim Burton Batman. He calls it visionary and very idiosyncratic. His idea with his Batman is he wanted Batman to stand out against the backdrop. Like he wanted the normalcy of the backgrounds of a city that you recognize, and then to have Batman come out as this extraordinary figure that's absolutely stands. Like when you see him in Batman Begins on that, perched on the side of the building, that's unique. You don't expect to see that. Whereas in the Tim Burton movies, he blends into his background, I guess you could say. So I don't want to take away from that with the Tim Burton ones because it is a very unique take.
Yeah, I actually like the fact that Batman just blends into the background and is hard to spot. He kind of becomes part of the shadows. You know what I mean? I kind of like that aspect of the Tim Burton ones.
Okay. Yeah, and it's a draw for me. Either way, I do. The production design, Anton Furst, the way that it's described in the original Sam Hamm script is, he says Gotham City is kind of like hell had burst through the sidewalk and spiraled into the sky. And I think that works perfectly. It's a very gothic, expressionistic kind of Fritz Lang Metropolis kind of look to the movie. And it's very unique. When I think of Batman, that's the first thing that I think of is the design and how, unlike any movie world that I'd seen before, which is kind of what you want out of movies, right?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So the production design's one. What's your number two for you? What's the second thing that stands out?
Number two, I'd probably say I think the cinematography is really well done. I like the lighting design as well. I like the way it looks. I love the film noir aspect of the whole thing.
Right.
So the darkness of it really appeals to me, and I think it was really well done. I wouldn't say it's the greatest thing ever filmed, but I think it looks really well done. You can tell they put a lot of thought and effort into, the camera work, and so I appreciate that.
Right, and I believe that's Roger Pratt who did the first two Harry Potters. I believe he went on and did those. He definitely captures the set, right? He definitely gets those in the shots. For me, the number two would have to be the Danny Elfman score.
Okay.
Danny Elfman's obviously very prolific. I think he's not as standout-ish as he used to be. When this Batman, my favorite score of his is the Midnight Run score. But that's just because, great movie. It doesn't sound anything like him. As soon as this Batman score hit, actually before that, like with Beetlejuice, and even The Simpsons, that's a very Danny Elfman-ish sound, and it's very recognizable, right?
Yeah, you mentioned The Simpsons. When I was watching this movie before doing this podcast, when the opening titles came on, the first thing I thought was, oh man, we got to see if the Simpsons theme, fits with this opening. And so my wife went and took the Simpsons theme and put it on top of the title sequence in the beginning of this Batman movie. And it almost fit. We had to do a little bit of editing, but we got it to fit, and it looks pretty good, I would say. I sent it to you, I think.
Yeah, it looks great. You had to combine or stretch it out, right? You had to do two different...
Just a little bit, yeah. But like I say, it almost could work for this movie. If you didn't know it was Simpsons, it could probably work.
Right. We'll link to that below. I did like that. It's very Danny Elfman sounding. Yeah, so that's why I think it would work. I just think the greatest superhero theme of all time is in my mind, without a doubt, Superman by John Williams. But this Batman theme is second, absolutely second. It stands out.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, when you hear Star Wars or Superman or this Batman theme, you know right away that that's what it is. Like, and that's what this score has done. It's definitely made Batman iconic.
Absolutely. And we'll get to it. I always like to describe the score as that theme needed to be that strong. Otherwise, we wouldn't know who to root for in the movie. But,
I agree with that, yeah.
but yeah, so the Danny Elfman score, I just bumped whoa, is everybody okay? We're having an earthquake. Anyway, that was my knee. I apologize. But that's from the very first notes and the fanfare and the march that builds from that. It's very striking. So I don't have any negatives to say about that Batman score, the Danny Elfman score.
Well, the third thing for me was the Danny Elfman score. So you've already kind of touched on my third thing that I thought was great about the movie. So the design, the camera work, and the music, I think, is what made this movie.
Okay, so the third thing for me, and I think instead of it being my favorite, I'm going to kind of gear it towards the third thing that really stood out for a lot of people when they saw this movie was Jack Nicholson's Joker.
Okay.
That's what that might be the problem. That's what people walked away from talking about. They talked about how great he was, how funny he was. They didn't really talk about Michael Keaton's Batman. They mostly talked about Jack Nicholson's Joker. And truth be told, he has maybe 60% of the screen time compared to Keaton's Batman. Okay. Nicholson is, performance-wise, he's the most standout portion of that cast because he's giving it his all. Right. And I don't want to detract. It's obviously very influential, and he made a bank. He made bank on that movie. I believe like $60 million because he waived his salary and got some back end.
Well, didn't he get back end on every other Batman movie that will be made in the future as well? Like, I think that he got like a piece of every movie to be made later.
Yeah, if it's Joker related, I think that wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah.
But the thing, and this is kind of where we're going to slide into the negatives. Nicholson, if you love him, great. I just don't think Drew McWeeny likes that. He wrote once that the Jack Nicholson performance in this movie is Jim Carrey before Jim Carrey was a thing. Okay. Nicholson he's out there. He's going over the top. He's giving it 175%, if not 200%. He's waving his butt in front of the camera. He's making farting noises. He's spinning around. He's goofing off. He's making weird noises like we talked about. And the problem is, without that stuff, there isn't anything. I don't know if there's anything to that character.
Yeah.
Let me ask you a question. What is Joker's arc in the movie? What is his goal?
Chaos, I would say, I don't know. I mean, that's what the character Joker usually wants is chaos, and
right.
But I don't really know other than what I know from the comics and what I know from other Batman movies. But it's not really clear what this Joker wants.
Right, and I think that might be an issue with the movie is I never know what anybody's goal is from scene to scene, or what the goal of a scene is from moment to moment. He's very anarchic. I mean, he's into art. I mean, that's what he starts out as a gangster. He kind of goes, he kills, he tries to take over the mob, but then he becomes an artist. He wrecks the Flugelheim Museum. But is that it? Like, obviously he wants for chaos, right? Like the Ledger one did.
Money on the citizens and poisons them at the same time.
Right. I think he's just making it up moment to moment. There's no, with the Heath Ledger Joker, his character was all about chaos, but it seemed like he had an end goal. He wanted to throw the entire city into turmoil and prove that the world is full of just terrible people just like him. I get a hint of that from the Jack Nicholson Joker, but that's not his through line. I think he's mostly just the scene where he finds Vicky Vale and he's like, Jesus Marimba, and he decides to go after her or whatever, right? He's got a lot of funny lines. He's got this town needs an enema, like you said. He's got you wouldn't hit a guy with glasses on, would you? That was a funny line. When he's on the TV screen with the mayor and he's like, on the other hand, Grissom had a wonderful singing voice. So there are moments when he's, go ahead.
I'm glad you're dead line. That's a good one.
Right. With the Joy Buzzer guy. He has moments, but it's mostly just goofing off and twirling around because there's nothing else to do that's interesting with the character on the page.
Right.
With the Nolan movies, there is something on the page. With Ledger, when you read that script for The Dark Knight, it's all there. All the dialogue is there. Heath Ledger didn't improvise, whole scenes. What he did is he took something that was good and he brought it to another level. He made it great. With Nicholson, you have mediocre to subpar material, and he's raising it enough to be entertaining, but it doesn't have that extra, it doesn't have the writing to back him up.
Yeah. Well, I have a couple issues with Jack Nicholson's Joker, and I know a lot of people think that he is the quintessential Joker, but I would disagree with that. I think that, first of all, as a kid, when I first saw it, I hated that prosthetic smile that he wore. I thought it looked extremely fake and ridiculous, and I hated the way his mouth looked as he talked through it. And watching it again as an adult, I still hate it. I still think it looks stupid, and I think it was kind of a cheap gimmick. I knew what they were going for, but I just never got past how stupid that fake smile looked. And also, my other issue is I never really felt like he developed a Joker laugh. I know he has the the loud cackle and everything, but for some reason to me it just seemed like it was just all over the place. Like sometimes he would just do a little small giggle, or he would like laugh silently, or then his big voice would laugh. And it never seemed cohesive. It never really seemed like he thought about it much. And so for me, that's right. Whenever he's on screen, I almost kind of like want to fast forward those scenes because I just think, well, he didn't do his homework. He didn't really prepare this character the way he should have. That stupid fake smile and the laugh that wasn't developed just didn't work for me. And not like other Jokers, like Heath Ledger and Joaquin Phoenix. They've actually like prepared something and had a definable laugh that made sense and a character and gave that character a backstory and everything. So for that reason, I tend to lean towards the Heath Ledger and the Joaquin Phoenix Joker versions, other than this antiquated Nicholson character.
Right. Well, to comment a little bit on that, the rictus grin that he has, I think he gets it. When Batman deflects that the bullet and it goes through his face or whatever, I think that's where the smile is supposed to come from. But when he opens his mouth, you can see the grin, but you can also see the lines of his mouth inside that grin.
Right. That's what bothers me. Right.
Yeah. So you can tell that, well, if he got it by getting shot through the face, that doesn't work because you can see his main lips within the bigger smile. And then the other thing too, I would agree with you on the laugh, but I think that ties in with he doesn't have a goal or an end game. It's all just moment to moment improvising, just like Nicholson's doing. His character's just improvising.
Well, didn't you say that they wanted to offer it to Robin Williams initially?
Yeah, I'm not sure how serious they were. I know Jack Nicholson waffled a little bit, and so they went to Robin Williams, and Robin did show interest. And so the Warner Brothers, the executives went back to Nicholson, and they said, look, we're going to get Robin Williams to do this if you don't. And so Nicholson was like, okay, I'll do it. And they left Robin in the lurch.
That's something that I think I would have liked to see. I would have been a really cool, interesting take on the character, I think.
Yeah, okay. Well, let's kind of switch gears then. Speaking of how Joker has no arc, let's go ahead and talk about Michael Keaton's Batman. You talked about too how I'm sorry. What was the last thing that you just said before I interrupted you? I had something.
Robin Williams being a possible good Joker.
An interesting take. Okay, yeah, I was going to say I had something revolutionary to talk about, but with Michael Keaton, he has a take on the character, but again, I don't think there's anything on the page. You go ahead. I've got some thoughts, but go ahead. What were you going to say?
Well, I would agree with that, but I would say that again, I hear a lot of these reviews you read online, people saying how Michael Keaton's the only Batman for them and how he's the original or whatever. And okay, but when you look at his performance, like, does he really give you anything? He really doesn't give us anything about where he came from, what he might be going through, any kind of suffering this character is going through, why he is Batman in the first place. We don't get any of that. There's no exposition for this character, and there's no really development. So when he makes these decisions, just kind of like, well, why is he doing that? And to my point, there's a scene when Vicky Vale and the Joker and Batman are all kind of in the same room, and you see Keaton grab the fireplace poker and say that whole line about going nuts. You want to get nuts? It just takes me out of the movie when I see that scene, it's a funny scene, and like I kind of understand what they were going for. It's a nice little moment, but it's out of place, and it seems like Bruce Wayne is now reverting back to becoming Beetlejuice. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Okay.
So, like, he didn't really know the character well enough. Whereas, would Bruce Wayne really act that way in that moment? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know
Yeah.
if I believe it. And so when it happens, I'm thinking, well, that's not believable.
Right. Well, let me just say this, that when he does that, we talked about Batman being the pinnacle, the paragon of man, right? He's a genius and he's super strong. I don't get the sense that Keaton is super strong. I just get the sense that he's so wired and so repressed that when he gets pissed, he can literally kill you, right? That's when you're afraid of him. He's not trained. He doesn't know karate. He just goes nuts on you, and he'll, like a psychotic, he'll beat you to death.
That doesn't seem like a true Bruce Wayne, character.
Yeah.
I don't think that's what Bruce Wayne would do in that moment.
Right. So here's the take, and again, I want to talk about. I don't ever want to go into these. My least favorite thing with a review, if I'm reading a review on the new Brad Pitt movie, I don't know what that critic. I don't want to know what the critic has to say about Brad Pitt's previous movie or how he hated, Ad Astra or something like that. Just tell me about the movie that you're talking about. I don't want to be that guy that keeps referencing other things, but since it's Batman, and we'll get to the worth a remake thing with Batman Begins. Christopher Nolan, one of the drawbacks to him is he gets criticized for overwriting things. A lot of his characters are overwritten. They say everything that's on their minds. And they monologue about it. They're very on the nose with the dialogue. They'll come out and they'll say stuff that they're saying. As opposed to this Batman movie, nobody comes out and says anything that they're saying. Nobody ever has a conversation about anything. They hint about things, but they never dive into it. And that's kind of the next section I want to talk about. What do you think? Overwritten or underwritten? What's better for you?
I think it's better to be over-prepared than under-prepared. You know what I mean? I think having more material to work with is better. And then you can always just cut out what you don't end up using or needing.
Yeah. Okay.
So definitely you got to have a better, more prepared script than an underwritten script.
Right. And it goes back to, again, with Ledger having a character to play with, I think Christian Bale had a character to play with. The biggest thing for me with Batman Begins is I finally felt like somebody got Batman and his psyche and the trauma and the heroism on screen. I knew everything that he was feeling every step of the way in that movie. My heart was pounding the whole time watching that movie in the theater because it just was getting it right for me. With Keaton, he has these hints. This is what's interesting is there's a part where he's talking with Alfred and Alfred says, she's talking about Vicky Vale, I feel there's a certain weight that lifts when she's here. And so he looks at Alfred and goes, Alfred, why don't you marry her? Or the scene when he has the date with her and they're on the opposite sides of the table, that's what a child would think of what a fancy dinner with a woman looks like.
Right.
At the end when he's fighting the Joker, and he says, he looks at him and goes, I made you, but you made me first. It's a child. He's like Arrested Development. In the Sam Hamm original script, he was even more of a neurotic. The mime attack part, you remember in this movie, Keaton kind of goes into a daze and he gets shot through the arm or his shirt does, and it doesn't faze him. In the original Sam Hamm script, he is so traumatized by the gunshots, and because he's not dressed as Batman, he cowers and he runs off and he hides in a corner in that script. And Vicky Vale has to go and get him and calm him down because he's not dressed in his cape and cowl. He doesn't know how to act. So he's even more neurotic. I do like that it has what Christian Bale did really well is he had the Batman persona, he had the Bruce Wayne in private persona, and then he had the dickish idiot Bruce Wayne. That just my favorite joke in Batman Begins at the end is when Alfred shows in the newspaper, says Batman might have made the front page, but Bruce Wayne got pushed to page 8, and it says drunken billionaire burns down house. Or in The Dark Knight where the Joker's ransoming the hospitals and Bruce Wayne crashes into that truck and he talks to Gordon and he goes, should I go to the hospital? And he's so out of touch that you wouldn't guess that he's Batman. With Keaton in this one, there is that Arrested Development, but let me ask you a question. If you didn't know anything about Batman, and this is a serious question now for you, for anybody listening, remove because context is important, remove anything you know about the Batman character. You don't know him from Adam. You walk in this movie, you know Batman sounds like a cool name. You don't know what he does. I think you just talked about that, why he does it. What do you find out about Batman in this movie? What do you learn about Batman if you hadn't walked in knowing everything you knew already?
Yeah, not much. I mean, they don't give you really anything to work with, which is the biggest problem of the movie, I would say. You're expected to know what you know from the comic books. And if you don't know that, then going into it, you're like, well, why is he dressed like a bat? Why does he do all this? And it's not until later on that, he finds out that the Joker killed his parents, and then all of a sudden he has, a motivation for something, and he goes crazy. But real quick, I want to touch on what I think about Michael Keaton. I'm not saying Keaton's a bad actor. I actually really like Michael Keaton. I think he's a good actor.
Yeah.
I think he's adequate in this role. But I've seen him do other things like, the Mr. Moms and the Beetlejuices and Multiplicity, and also he's a great dramatic actor too, like Pacific Heights and My Life and movies like that. In fact, there's a scene in My Life where at the end of the movie, he's shaving his dad who's on his deathbed, and it's this really emotional scene, and I can't get through that scene without breaking down. And it just proves what a great actor Michael Keaton really is. But I think because script problems and whatever reason, they didn't give him enough to work with in this movie, but he did okay with what he was given.
Yeah.
But to your point, yes, there's not much that you can know from Batman.
Right. Well, I kind of brought up a point and then I dropped it, but with the public dickish Bruce Wayne, the guy that's out of touch with everything, Michael Keaton does have some parts of that. When they walk into his armory and they're like, where does this come? He must be king of the Wicker people. Where is this guy from? And he says it's from Japan. They ask him, well, how do you know that? He says, because I bought it in Japan. Like he has, and in Batman Returns, my favorite part of Batman Returns is a part where he's looking at there's a lot of microfiche looking in these Batman movies. He's always looking at monitors and microfiches. But in Batman Returns, Alfred brings him some soup and he takes a bite of it and he spits it out. And it's like, it's cold. And Alfred goes, it's vichyssoise. It's supposed to be cold. And then he goes, and then he starts eating it because, he's just not, he has, like I said, he has a take, but I don't think it's like Nicholson. There's not a lot to play with. There are hints of an interesting character in there. And again, nobody talks about anything. I don't know what these people are feeling at any moment. There's a scene where Vicky, which is weird because Alfred brings her into the Batcave and there's no reaction. I think they keep Batman's identity as a mystery and his psychology. And when she finds that out, like, oh my gosh, his parents were murdered in that alley. I think she gets it, but we're denied a scene where we see it. Again, we're denied a lot of stuff. She goes to talk to him and she literally says, why do you do this? Why are you doing this? And all he can say is, because nobody else can. And that's it. Yeah. And then he goes off and that's the interesting thing, that's will be the next topic. This Batman gets a reputation for being a killer, right? Before I get to that, Keaton says, I've got to get to work. I'd like to work in this relationship, but I've got to go to work. We never find, and then he stops the Joker and he saves Vicky, but what does that solve? What does it solve? What is the arc there? I don't understand. But going back to go ahead. Sorry.
Could all these problems be just because this movie was overhyped and overproduced, and you had, too many cooks in the kitchen, so to speak? All these producers kind of like, throwing their ideas at it, and they should throw these different, scenes in, and so maybe somebody say some of those original moments in the script got taken out, and which kind of could probably hurt the movie in the long run, which, obviously we think it probably did.
Right. Well, Sam Hamm started the original script, and he wrote a draft, which is the one I talked about. And then there was a writer's strike, and they brought in Warren Scarron, who I believe worked on Beetlejuice with Tim Burton. So he touched up stuff. He and Burton added the Joker killed Batman's parents thing. Sam Hamm is on record saying, that's not what I wanted. I didn't want that. I was against that from day one. And Tim Burton, as soon as Sam Hamm was off the project, I think Tim Burton was like, oh, goody, I'm going to put that. And I get what it's doing. It's making Batman and Joker the yin and yang, which is what they are in the comics. But again, it doesn't, they start punching each other. They don't develop it. They don't, you go into that relationship or what defines them. Yeah, one created the other, but that's it. There's no working out of that theme. And like I said, as soon as Batman doesn't, I noticed this time watching it just with the other day, Batman doesn't kill anybody until he finds out that Joker killed his parents. You have the scene on the rooftop, and that's another thing. This Batman doesn't save anybody. He mostly, what did you say was
he just comes in after the fact. Like, he always shows up after the crime's been committed. So it's like, what's the point of showing up?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You miss saving the person.
Well, who does he save in this movie? Name one person that he saves in this movie besides Vicky Vale.
Then nobody.
I think what he's doing is he's trying to build that reputation as, tell all your friends about me, stay scared. But he's not heroic in this movie. I know that he stops the balloons, but that's after half of Gotham has been killed by the Smilex gas. Like, he's in the Batwing just circling around for, I don't know why. Like, is he trying to lose altitude? But I don't know how many people die during that time before he takes the balloons away.
Yeah, and he's shooting his guns into the crowd, trying to kill the goons, but is he killing innocent people at the same time?
Yeah, we don't see it.
Gotham citizens,
I'm assuming, but like I said, he in the Axis Chemical Factory, he doesn't kill anybody. He saves, he drops the guy off the side, but he hooks him with his the line or whatever, and he's dangling. There is the question of whether he accidentally drops Jack Napier into the vat of acid, or if he does it on purpose. But until he finds out the Joker kills his parents, that's when he starts going on a full-on murder spree. He takes the Batmobile with machine guns into the Axis Chemical Factory. He blows it up with bombs. There are dozens, if maybe not hundreds of people in that building that he's just killed. And then you find out he's not even in the Batmobile. Like, he's remote controlling it. When he's in the Batwing, which is a great design, the Batmobile and the Batwing are probably my favorite vehicle designs in any Batman movie. But the Batwing, he's got missiles on it. He's got guns. He's literally, there's a shot of him shooting a goon. You can see this guy getting riddled with bullets. I don't find this Batman very heroic. He doesn't inspire me the way that the Batman of the comics inspires me.
Right. I agree with that.
So, again, context is everything. If you remove everything you know about Batman, I don't think, it's like you said, I don't think they tell you much about what this Batman is. I wanted to I want to go back, and there's a scene that sums up this movie. You mentioned it. It's the Let's Get Nuts scene. But before we do that, we kind of touched on the Too Many Cooks in the Kitchen. With Tim Burton, do you feel like this is 100% a Tim Burton movie? I know that he was just starting out. Beetlejuice is a very Tim Burton movie. That's 100%. What percentage would you say Batman is, Tim Burton-wise?
Maybe 30, 35, maybe 40%. I don't know. Like, there's not a whole lot. That's just what I wanted to bring up. All the Tim Burton isms that we've kind of grown accustomed to, you don't see a lot of that in this Batman movie. At least I don't think you see them.
Right.
Maybe they're there. Maybe I just don't know that they're there. But it doesn't really compare to the Beetlejuices and the Alice in Wonderlands and the other movies that Tim Burton is famous for. Edward Scissorhands, there's another one.
Yeah.
But those are obviously Tim Burton movies. I can't really see any of that here.
Right. And that's my question. Why would you hire a visionary director like Tim Burton and not let him be Tim Burton?
Yeah.
I think you're right. There are shots. There's the shot of the shield slamming over the Batmobile is very stop motion-y. When the Batwing is lugging around those balloons, and there's a shot of it flies past the camera and you see the balloons rise up, and it reminded me of A Nightmare Before Christmas. There are Tim Burton-y things in there, but the movie is a product. It's not a personal vision.
Yeah.
We talked about the Prince music. Literally twice in the movie, it stops so we can hear an entire Prince song.
Right.
A Party Man and Trust. We hear the entire song. It stops for a music video. And Mark Canton, one of the producers or one of the heads of WB, Warner Brothers, Prince, that was his biggest hit. Purple Rain was his biggest hit. So he wanted to have Prince songs in it. Danny Elfman was originally, he did the score and they were like, we're going to have you co-write the score with Prince. And Danny Elfman was like, no. I mean, that's an honor. Like, I admire Prince, but it's going to completely negate the point that we're going after. I think there's a couple shots of Batman's boots where you can see the Nike symbol on it.
Right. But as a product, it did its job. You know what I mean? It
absolutely.
made a lot of money. It
absolutely.
caused the whole Batmania, hysteria theme. So it did its job. It worked, but
Right.
it fell short in other areas.
Okay. So to sum up the movie, we could go on for another hour probably talking about everything here, but to sum it up, and the movie being unfinished and not following through on things, there is a scene, again, it's the let's get nuts scene. This kind of sums up my problems with the movie. Okay. Michael Keaton shows up to Vicky Vale's apartment, to Kim Basinger, Bruce Wayne shows up to Vicky Vale's apartment to tell her that he's Batman. Okay. First of all, it's a very sitcom-y scene. He's dressed like Chandler from Friends. He's got like the vest. He's like nerdy. The other thing too is Keaton wears glasses. This Bruce Wayne wears glasses at a couple points. Isn't he supposed to have like the ultimate vision? I mean, I get that Keaton's in his 40s, but anyway, so he shows up to tell Vicky Vale. It's very sitcom-y. She has the line, "Oh my gosh, you're married." She walks away and he's like, he's rehearsing this stuff. And then the Joker comes in and threatens her. Bruce Wayne puts the tray in his chest just in case. And then he has the what's the goal to this scene? I get that Keaton goes in to tell Vicky to tell Kim Basinger that he's Batman, but he never does. Right? He gets shot.
It kind of seems like just an excuse to have a scene with all three of them in a scene together. You know what I mean? Like nothing really gets accomplished.
That's a goal, dramatically. That's a goal. That's a narrative goal. And then he shoots Bruce Wayne, and then Joker just leaves. Why did he show up? Did he just show up to give her that box? Like, what? Did he try to kidnap her and then he said, "Well, I committed murder. I can't stick around now." In the original script, there was a scene after that scene where Joker leaves and there's a parade and Bruce Wayne gets up and he puts on a ski mask and he calls Alfred to get me my bat suit. And Alfred, he's on a horse and Alfred throws him his bat suit and he gets dressed. There was a whole giant scene after that. So I guess that's where it was going. But as it exists in the movie, and then Bruce Wayne gets up and disappears, what is Vicky Vale supposed to think at this point?
Right.
What is going? Literally, I watched it this time. I was like, "What is going on? Like, what is the point of any of this? It can't just be for show. It can't just be to get these three people in a room and have Keaton act against Nicholson."
Right.
You know what I mean? There's some stuff in there where Keaton says, "This is a nice apartment. You got lots of space." Nicholson comes in and says, "You got lots of space." So they're trying to do that yin yang thing, but is that it?
I think it all boils down to script problems. I think it could just be it's a weak script, and so they didn't really have much to work with.
Okay, yeah, I agree with that. So again, if we can sum it up, we always have a portion in our podcast, the worth remembering or worth a remake. Do you think this movie is worth remaking or is it worth remembering?
Well, for me, I would say it's worth a remake, and it has been remade, obviously. But I think it still shouldn't hold its place in history. I think it still has the great design. It has the great camera work, and then the great score. But it fell short in acting and screenwriting. So I think that those things definitely should require a remake. And the remakes have been made, and they're great. They're not perfect. Like I said, it was not perfect, but they anyway, I'm not sure what my point is.
Okay.
Remake, it can be remade, yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm in the same boat with you. I definitely think it's worth a remake. We've talked about Batman Begins and how that, was Batman for me. I don't want to take away from what this movie means to people. I don't want to take away from the impact that it had. It definitely was a kind of a marketing over substance movie. You went to go see it to be a part of that experience. But again, I don't understand the Batman in here. I don't understand what he's thinking, why he does what he does. I don't get the like I talked about, what the draw is for me, him trying to be a hero and overcome that darkness. That's not in here. Vicky Vale and Alexander Knox are more developed characters. They have more of an arc in this. Everybody derides the Schumacher Batmans, but I think I understand the Batman better in Batman Forever and Batman and Robin than I understand the Batman in this movie or in Batman Returns. In Batman and Robin, that's a definite part of the comics where Batman is always, he He's always right. I say writing, that's probably bad. He's always on Robin's case. He's always pushing. He's like, being a jerk to him or being an overprotective father. That's there in Batman and Robin, and that's more of a character arc than he has in this movie, and that's a problem.
Yeah.
If Batman and Robin, again, the execution of it might be bad. The execution of this movie is definitely better than the execution of Batman and Robin. But if they get the character moments better in Batman and Robin than they do in this one, that's a problem. And that's why I think it's worth a remake. But again, let us know in the comments below what you think. If obviously you're going to have people disagreeing with us, and that's fine, as long as we don't go after each other and purposely try to hurt each other. We just want to have a conversation about it. Opinion should lead to discussion. It shouldn't lead to lynching. It shouldn't lead to hate. It shouldn't lead to more violence. It should be something to help us grow and something we can talk about. Would you agree with that?
Totally agree with that. Yeah.
Okay, so we're both in agreement. Worth a remake on Batman. Still very watchable, still a very entertaining movie. Just a lot of things they could have done better. Correct?
Yep.
Okay, so we'll bring that to a close. We'll bring our discussion or the meat of our conversation to a close, and we'll be right back with some final thoughts for what we're going to talk about next time. Okay, so that was our discussion about Batman. A new segment that we wanted to do for NostalgiaCast is trying to keep the meat of our conversation. Again, with Zoom, I never know if it's going to cut us off at the 45-minute point or the hour point. We have an outline that we follow, and so there are some things that we realize after taking a step back and going and grabbing a drink that, we forgot to talk about these. So as far as I want to talk about pickups with this particular Batman. Was there anything you wanted to bring up that we didn't talk about in the meat of our conversation?
Yeah, one of the things I wanted to talk about was Michael Keaton's Batman voice. It wasn't really distinctive. You know what I mean? Like he had his Bruce Wayne voice, and then he kind of changed it a little bit to mask it as Batman. But anybody who knows Bruce Wayne, when he goes into his Batman voice, you're still going to know that that's Bruce Wayne.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it wasn't really disguised very well. So that was one issue I wanted to bring up.
Okay. Well, he does lower it a little octave, right? I think he's the one that said he lowers it a little bit so it's a little bit raspier, but you're right. You can kind of still tell. I think especially on Returns, Keaton kept cutting his dialogue out because his opinion was, if I keep talking, it's gonna sound silly, and then you're gonna know who I am.
Right.
And so, to the detriment of the character, I think he kept cutting back. Christian Bale, he definitely had. That's a lot of point of contention with Christian Bale's Batman, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, definitely. But I actually really like the fact that Christian Bale disguised his voice. I think it was needed. If he's going to disguise himself, you might as well disguise yourself. You know what I mean? If you're going to wear a bat suit and you don't want people to know that it's you, you have to change your voice. You have to actually come up with a different sounding voice. People don't know that it's you.
Right.
So it's like this low, raspy, voice that he kind of came up with, and it kind of can be annoying at times. It still was needed and necessary, and I think it worked for the character.
Right.
Whereas Michael Keaton's Batman just, mildly changed it, and then that was supposed to be sufficient.
Right. Well, it's funny. Keaton mildly changes it. Kilmer, I like his voice. He obviously Kevin Conroy in the Batman animated series. He's probably the ultimate example of how to do that right. Kilmer, as far as live action goes, I like how this is his Bruce Wayne voice. So, Dr. Chase Meridian, it's nice to meet you. And then he lowers it, he goes, Dr. Chase Meridian, like it's bats aren't rodents. Like he disguises, he has like a comic booky throaty voice that I like. And then Clooney, man, Clooney doesn't change his voice at all. Like, how would you not know with the head bobs and that voice that that's not Bruce Wayne? You know what I mean? So with Christian Bale, I think his voice got sillier as it went. I mean, he committed to it so much that he wouldn't step back from it. And I get it. He feels like an animal. He's a different person when he's in that thing. I just think it's a long way from you don't have to thank me to where's the trigger? Give her the trigger. There's a major difference between, but I still. The Batman, the voice does not maketh the man, I guess you could say. Batman is not just about the voice. There's more to him than just that. And as far as the character goes, I think the Nolan version nailed the inner
Or
life.
you can be like Ben Affleck and just get a voice modulator.
Right. Not even try. Right. Okay. So is there anything else that you wanted to bring up?
Yeah, one more thing that I forgot to mention was in the very opening scene before he fights the two hoodlums, whatever, on top of the roof.
Yeah.
You see animated shadowy Batman figure kind of disappear into a wall or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Whenever I see that, it always takes me out of the movie for a second because I think, well, what was that? And that just looks stupid. It always kind of reminded me of the Ghost movie at the end where the character.
Oh yeah.
Dies,
Yeah.
shadowy demon figures come and pull him away.
Yeah.
So it kind of reminds you of that. But back then, that was our best we could do. That was great special effects back then. So
Yeah. Well, the Batwing, when he's flying, you could see the model kind of turn its head. So I appreciated that they did that. I guess and then it's interesting too, because when Batman turns around, he's a cartoon. And when Joker dies at the end, when he falls from the bell tower, he's a cartoon falling.
Oh,
so
really?
maybe they're trying to watch it again. It's really obvious. Maybe they're trying to tie it.
Yeah.
But that was the thing that I wanted to bring up that we didn't talk about. When you see Batman turn as a cartoon, that's not the movement that he has in the actual suit. Like he can't turn his head, right? That's a big point of contention with that. And the thing with the movie, we kind of talked about the Tim Burton-esque stuff. There's a lot of comic book logic in this movie. Like when the Batmobile chase and there's a guy that jumps out with swords. Like, where did that guy come from? Right? And what you're supposed to answer is, it's a comic book movie. You're not supposed to think twice about that. When Joker takes Vicky Vale up to the cathedral, where do those three guys come from? That wasn't part of his plan, was it?
Sitting there waiting. They were there.
Right.
They were kind of
Yeah. In the Kevin Smith's Fat Man on Batman podcast, they did a commentary on it. And his thing was, okay, guys, assuming that the Batwing blows up, I want you to be at the top of the cathedral. But if it doesn't, I need you to meet me at the Rite Aid. And then the guys are just up there. Did he say if the Batwing blows up, we're supposed to be up here at the right? You can see them having that discussion. And then with the suit, it's got so little mobility, right? There's so little movement, but you see the bat suit so little that it exists in this world. You buy it. But in the Nolan world, that wouldn't fly because you don't know, he doesn't have any movement at all, right? And so the movie, it doesn't exist as part of this real world. None of those 4 Batman movies exist in our world. They're all a separate world, a very idiosyncratic world that's in a different universe. And so again, that's the last point that I wanted to make with Batman. But again, that's our first video venture into YouTubing, podcasting. We sparked some conversation, like we said. Let's talk in the comments. Jonny, I picked the movie this week. What movie did you want to pick for next time?
Well, this is a movie that I've been wanting to do for a long time, and it's one that is always on TV. And so I saw it a couple of weeks ago, and A Few Good Men, which also has Jack Nicholson in it, and Tom Cruise, and Demi Moore, and Kevin Bacon, and all of Hollywood. They're all in it.
Cuba Gooding Jr., he's in there. Yeah.
It's a movie that I've always wanted to talk about, and I think you and I have some history with it, so it'll be fun to kind of reminisce and, talk about it. So
so the Rob Reiner directed, Aaron Sorkin written, A Few Good Men.
Also a play before it became a movie, so we'll talk about that.
Absolutely. I haven't seen it in a while either. I do have fond memories of that, but let's watch it and see if anything doesn't stand the test of time with that one. So again, signing off for episode 21 of NostalgiaCast. My name is Darin Lundberg.
And I'm Jonny Craddock.
And we'll see you next time.
Gentlemen, let's broaden our minds. This town needs an enema.